understand what that is.
You to do such a fool thing like that. Don't worry, Mom. I know what I'm doing. Besides, the U.S. Army can't prove I did anything to their computer records.
But Miss Davis said that you could get 3 years in juvenile detention.
Don't worry, Mom. Everything's gonna be fine.
I'm Judge Robert J. Franklin. I chose the law as my way of serving my fellow citizens. As an elected judge in the family court, I pray each day that God will give me the wisdom to always temper justice with mercy.
All right. This court is now in session. The Honorable Robert Franklin presiding. Raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. You may be seated. All right, Miss Page, let's begin.
Your Honor, before you is the juvenile delinquency hearing of James Hudson, Jr., a 16-year-old accused of breaking and entering his school to illegally use a computer. Also present are James' mother, Mrs. Millicent Hudson, and prosecution witnesses, Army Major George Brooks and Mr. Mitchell Green, James High School principal.
I see. All right. Thank you, Miss Page. And Mr. Barlow, have you an opening statement?
Your Honor, James Hudson, Jr. is a very bright young man who entered the U.S. Army computer system, gained access to confidential government files, and destroyed them in a criminal act of calculated computer vandalism. In order to prove that he was smarter than his government, Mr. Hudson, operating under the code name Commander Kilotron, broke into his high school records office like a common burglar and used Army information in an act that is the moral equivalent of treason. Justice would be served, the needs of this country would be served, by finding James Hudson guilty and sentencing him to the maximum term allowed by law.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Barlow. Ms. Davis, have you an opening statement?
Yes, I do, Your Honor. James Hudson is an extremely gifted young man with an excellent school record, no previous trouble with the law. His intellectual curiosity got the better of him for a moment, and he played a prank that he shouldn't have played. But that's all it was a boyish prank with no real harm done. He is no criminal, Your Honor. Someone, using the name Commander Kilotron, apparently did alter Army records, but that someone is not James Hudson, who is completely innocent of all charges against him. Thank you, Your Honor.
I see. Thank you, Ms. Davis. Mr. Barlow, do I understand correctly that the federal government has dropped its charges against Mr. Hudson?
Yes, Your Honor. There was a plea bargain, and all federal charges against Mr. Hudson were dropped based on the understanding the state would press for the maximum penalty of breaking and entering charge.
I see. All right, Mr. Barlow, call your first witness, please.
I call Major George Brooks.
Very well, sir. Major Brooks, let me remind you, sir, that you were sworn in at the beginning of this hearing, and you are testifying under oath. Very well. Go ahead, sir.
Major Brooks, what's your present assignment?
I'm with the Special Internal Military Task Force, responsible for maintaining the security and confidentiality of the computer systems used by the armed forces.
And how did you first become involved in the case of Commander Kilotron?
That name first started appearing in our computers beginning the week of April 17th of this year. A report came across my desk stating that the hacker, that's what we call an unauthorized user who breaks into the system illegally, had gained access to the U.S. Army's main information computer based at the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. Anyway, this Commander Kilotron, over just the period of a couple of months, destroyed several sensitive and confidential files.
Did you eventually trace the source of Commander Kilotron's entry?
Yes, sir. We put a backtrace on the telephone connection of the computer terminal being used. The computer was owned by Belmont High School.
What did you do next, Major?
We got in touch with the school officials. Mr. Green over there in particular. He was most cooperative. Helped us install a video camera in the computer room at the school for surveillance.
And did you eventually apprehend someone using the computer?
Yes, sir, we did. We had a stake out there for a week before we caught him, though. It's that boy sitting at the table.
Let the record reflect that he's pointing out the defendant, James Hudson, Jr.
After you realized you had your man, what did you do?
I had a local police officer with me, and we surprised the kid just as he was sitting down to work at the computer. He grabbed a bunch of papers and he ran like a scared rabbit.
Where did you eventually apprehend James Hudson?
In the second floor ladies' restroom. He was trying to flush the Army access codes down the toilet, and we heard the noise.
Your Honor, I'd like to offer State's Exhibit A, the Army access codes found in the possession of James Hudson.
So entered and marked, please.
Thank you, Major Brooks. No further questions.
Very well, sir. Ms. Davis, your witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Major Brooks, you testified that this mysterious Commander Kilotron destroyed Army records. Now, what kind of records were they?
Most of the tampering was in the Army budget files. The ones where we record all costs on several military expenditures. This kid who calls himself Kilotron, he entered all sorts of comments into the files about our cost. Things like, who gets the kickback on this $50 hammer? We lost several other files, too, personnel and payroll, mostly on vets who were killed or missing in Vietnam.
But the truth is that this Commander Kilotron, whoever he is, didn't access any defense files and didn't destroy anything essential, did he?
I would say the budget stuff is pretty sensitive. But the main thing is that we can't afford to have people like this playing around with our national security.
Major Brooks, did you actually see James Hudson accessing the computer system or using the name Commander Kilotron?
No. But he was arrested at a terminal that had been used for a break-in, and he had the Army access codes.
Major Brooks, these access codes are readily available to anyone with even a little computer experience. Isn't that true?
No. Well, they shouldn't be.
Tell me, Major Brooks, did any of these break-ins by Commander Kilotron occur during school hours?
Sure. Most any time of the day or night.
So, if James Hudson is Commander Kilotron, you would have us believe that he was breaking into Army records with instructors and other students right there in the room with him?
Well, when we caught him, he was alone.
Major Brooks, isn't it true that since James was arrested, there have been not one, but 2 break-ins by the real Commander Kilotron?
No, it's not. We had a couple of incidents.
Thank you, Major Brooks. No further questions.
Major Brooks, you may step down. Thank you, sir. Mr. Barlow, please call your next witness.
I call Mitchell Green.
Now, brilliant nail colors for today's new fashions. Lead press-on nails in 18 deep, rich, dimensional colors. Cotton candy.
Sample.
Opal mist.
Mysterious.
Lead press-on nails. 18 great nail colors you just press on with undreamed-of ease. Desert...
Mr. Barlow?
Mr. Green, what is your current position?
I'm the principal at Belmont High School. Jimmy Hudson is one of my students. One of the best until all this happened. I guess I should have known something was wrong.
Why is that?
Well, a couple of factors. Jimmy's attendance was off during April and May. I remember asking him about it, but he clammed up. And then his mid-semester grades came in, and they were way down. Jimmy's extremely bright, but his usual A work had slipped to B's and C's.
So your perfect student was skipping classes and failing during the months of April and May, the same period as the computer break-ins. Is that correct?
Yes. But the worst part is, it was the same time that Jimmy had asked me for a key to the computer room so he could work on a project he was doing for my government class. I guess I shouldn't have given him the key. This whole mess might have never happened if he hadn't had the key.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Very well. Ms. Davis, your witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Green, putting aside the last couple of months, what kind of student is Jimmy Hudson?
He's extremely intelligent and hardworking. The IQ tests show him to be at genius level. His grades are excellent, and his attendance is near perfect.
In your expert opinion as a school administrator and an educator, would you say that Jimmy Hudson has shown any tendency towards vandalism or malicious mischief?
None. I see a lot of kids every day, and you can tell the mean ones. They have school records that read like police reports. Jimmy's record is spotless. Have happened.
Thank you, Mr. Green. No further questions.
Any more witnesses, Mr. Barlow?
No, Your Honor. The prosecution rests.
Very well. You may step down, Mr. Green. Thank you very much. Ms. Davis, you may call your first witness.
Yes, I called Jimmy Hudson.
Very well, Mr. Hudson. You're facing some very serious charges here today, young man. Have your rights been explained to you?
Yes, Your Honor.
You understand that you are required to tell the truth as you sit there in the witness box, but also you are not required to say anything that might incriminate you. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir. I mean, Your Honor.
All right. Go ahead, Counselor.
Jimmy, the day you were arrested, you were caught with the Army access codes. Now, were you in fact trying to gain access to the Army computer system?
Well, I'll tell you like it is, Miss Davis. I did have those codes, but actually it was all kind of an accident.
What do you mean by an accident?
Well, see, there's this computer bulletin board computer hackers can use. On it was a list of classified codes, and I thought it might be fun to check them out. I tried one, and pow, there's the Army computer on my screen.
Referring to Prosecution Exhibit A, the classified printout of the access codes, did you get this from a public computer bulletin board?
Yeah, anyone can get them. I mean, the Army knows that.
Jimmy, why did you run when Major Brooks and the local police entered the computer room?
I got scared. I mean, I knew I broke the law by breaking into the high school. And I did have that classified code printout. I just got scared and ran.
Jimmy, who is Commander Kilotron?
I wish I knew. That guy's a legend. Every computer hacker out there would love to know how he does what he does and gets away with it.
Jimmy, did you destroy any U.S. Army files or programs?
I didn't destroy any files.
Thank you. No further questions.
Your witness, Miss Barlow.
Mr. Hudson, have you ever used the name Commander Kilotron?
No.
Did you access the Army's computer and destroy confidential files?
Well, when I was arrested, the only thing on my screen was a request for access. The Army computer wasn't broken into.
Young man, don't play word games with me.
I don't know what you mean.
I think you do. At any time, did you enter the Army's computer? I want a yes or no answer.
I refuse to answer on the grounds that it might incriminate me.
Are you Commander Kilotron?
No.
Mr. Hudson, did you alter any records in the Army computer?
I refuse to answer on the grounds that it might incriminate me.
I have nothing further of this witness, Your Honor.
Very well, Mr. Barlow. Miss Davis?
Your Honor, may I request a moment with my client? I didn't know that he was going to plead the Fifth.
Very well, go right ahead. Miss Page, may I see you for a moment up here?
What the hell are you doing? You've wrecked your whole defense. You told me you were innocent.
I am innocent of what they said.
Well, it sure doesn't look that way. If I'd known you were going to plead the Fifth, I'd never put you on the stand.
Miss Davis, what's going to happen?
I'll be frank, Mrs. Hudson, it doesn't look good. Unless we think of something quick, Jimmy's going to end up in the detention center for sure.
Put me on the stand, Miss Davis. I think I can explain what happened. At least let me give it a try.
No, Mom, I don't want you to go up there.
You be quiet, Jimmy. I'm not going to let your father's ghost drag you into the dust.
Are you ready to proceed, Miss Davis?
Well, Your Honor, I hadn't intended to call Jimmy Hudson's mother, but it looks like she may have some information that's relevant to the case. May I have a few moments to confer with her, please?
Very well, Miss Davis. We'll have a short recess, please.
Thank you.
Are under oath. Go ahead, Counselor.
Mrs. Hudson, would you please tell the court why you asked to testify?
Well, all of a sudden it hit me when Jimmy was up here talking. I think I know what happened and why he's not Commander Kilotron. When Mr. Barlow asked him if he had destroyed any of the files or had altered any of the records, he wouldn't deny the part about altering the records, and that's when it hit me, about the letter.
What letter?
Well, early in April, we received a letter from the local Vietnam Veterans Memorial Committee. They're going to build a memorial here, and they wanted to use Jimmy's father's name on it. The committee needed some information about his military career.
Mr. Hudson was a Vietnam veteran?
Yes. He was killed in the latter days of the war, helping to evacuate civilians during the pullout in Saigon.
Is there any reason you know of that this letter would cause Jimmy any problems?
Well, I always tell Jimmy the good things about his father, never any of the bad things. And it sort of worries me that maybe he decided to find out these things on his own after he got that letter.
Mom, that's enough. You don't have to say anything. Get down off the
Mr.
stand.
Hudson, you're in enough trouble already. Now, sit down and be quiet, or I'll have you removed from the courtroom. Go ahead, Miss Hudson.
You see, I always told Jimmy that his father was a war hero. And that's true. He got a medal for what he did. But the real truth is, Jimmy's father was in the stockade for using and selling drugs after the fall of Saigon. The Army let him out at the end to help, and he redeemed himself. I just didn't want Jimmy to know the rest of it. I just didn't want to hurt you, son.
Mom, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me you knew all that? I did it all for you, Mom. I did it for you.
Your Honor, I have no further questions of Mrs. Hudson. However, I would like to recall Jimmy Hudson.
Mr. Barlow, any cross-examination?
No, Your Honor, I think at this point we're all very interested in what Jimmy has to say.
Very well. Miss Hudson, you may step down. Thank you very much. Jimmy, take the stand, please.
Tell the truth, son. Don't get into any more trouble, please.
Jimmy, are you ready to tell the whole truth?
Yeah. There's nothing left to hide. I feel really stupid.
Well, let's start at the top. Did you break into the Army's computer system?
Yes, I did.
For what purpose?
Well, at first I was just curious. I wanted to see if I could do it using the numbers I got off the bulletin board. They worked, so I decided to check my dad's Army file.
Did you gain access to your father's military records?
Yeah, I sure did. It was all there. The Purple Heart, the Silver Star, all the medals, and the arrest for drugs. He died a hero, but if he had lived, he would have been kicked out of the Army for sure. And I never knew my mom already knew. I thought she'd already sent the letter in to the memorial people, and I was afraid she'd find out all the bad stuff.
Did you alter or destroy your father's files?
Not right away. I was just looking around to see what I could do, and that's when I ran into Commander Kilotron. I saw what he was doing to the system, and I got the idea to use his name. I was the copycat. I thought I could get away with altering one file while he was trashing the system.
So, your real motivation then was to protect your father's reputation and to protect your mother's feelings.
Yeah. It seemed like a good idea at the time. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm really sorry.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Barlow, any re-cross-examination?
Just one question, Your Honor. Mr. Hudson, do you admit you illegally used the school computer system, illegally entered the Army's computer system, and deliberately altered a confidential personnel file?
Yes, I did all that.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Very well. You may step down, Jimmy. Thank you. All right, counselors. I'll hear closing arguments now. Mr. Barlow?
Your Honor, James Hudson has just admitted to the crime which he was accused. Whatever his motive may have been, it was no excuse to alter Army records and violate a system for the protection of documents crucial to our government's military records. His crime must be punished. However, in light of the new facts presented here today, we are going to ask that the court recommend 1 year in juvenile detention as opposed to the 3-year sentence previously requested.
All right, Mr. Barlow. Ms. Davis?
Yes, Your Honor. James Hudson is not Commander Kilotron. He did not destroy any Army files. He did not trash the system. What he did try to do was protect his mother from finding out information that he thought would hurt her terribly. We ask for leniency in dealing with him. He has learned a great deal from this experience, and he will not make the same mistake twice. Thank you, Your Honor.
Very well, Ms. Davis. This court will stand in recess while I consider the disposition of this case.
A pregnant girl begs the judge for permission to marry her boyfriend.
The baby's a kind of, well, a symbol of our love.
But her mom says this guy is really a sex-crazed gigolo from the wrong side of the tracks.
She's twisting this all around. I never did anything with her.
Oh, no? Then how come I know about the little star tattooed on your left hip?
Is he really just a gigolo?
Jessica is the only girl I've ever been with.
That's a laugh.
Find out next time on The Judge.
You can add a new... I've reviewed the testimony in this case very carefully, Mr. Hudson, James. And I have no doubt that your motives were good. And clearly, there was no malice intended toward your country. You had the best of intentions. You wanted to preserve your father's memory, and you wanted to spare your mother needless heartbreak. However, James, good intentions are not an excuse for criminal behavior. You have admitted that you deliberately broke into your school and trespassed for the express reason of using the computer for an illegal act. On the charges of breaking and entering and trespassing, I find you guilty as charged. Your sentencing hearing will be scheduled at a later date, but at that time, I will recommend a sentence of community service rather than juvenile detention as requested by the prosecution. Perhaps we can find some way to put your computer abilities to work for the public good. And Mrs. Hudson, if you'll take a word of advice, go home with your son right now and tell him everything you know about his father. Tell him the truth, no matter how much it may hurt at the moment. He'll understand. He's a very caring young man. And you'll both feel better for it. As we've just seen, family skeletons have a way of coming to life and creating problems. But the kind of love you and your son share has a way of solving them. Good luck to both of you. This court stands adjourned.
Tune in at noon today when Gabe Kaplan's life is in hilarious jeopardy in Tulips.
For a list of organizations.
Service